Hello there, my name is Matt Lees and welcome to a video about Dying Light and the things that Dying Light gets wrong. But listen up, caveat, because I don't want to seem like I'm being super negative about it, especially because a lot of people might think about this game and think, well, surely it does loads of things wrong. Techland games don't tend to be very good, but Dying Light actually does a lot of things right, and these are things I will talk about. But in order to understand whether or not it's kind of worth playing, you need to understand the things it gets wrong as well. Secondly, right off the bat, I have to inform you this video will contain mild spoilers, although I'd heavily recommend that you just don't care about that, because honestly, the story in this game is dreadful. Now, the first thing you're introduced to in Dying Light is a tutorial / exposition thing, which inexplicably and unforgivably lasts for about 40 minutes. And Jesus, on a motorbike, it's very difficult to like the game at this stage. You've got a dickhead who unironically keeps calling you a noob. You don't get to go outside and do anything with zombies. And a protagonist that seemingly is just helping people out because somebody said he was lazy.
We don't tolerate lazy assholes here in the tower.
Hey, be fair. I'm not lazy. I'm not lazy.
But actually that's a lie, because you're not lazy and you're maybe just pretending to be lazy because actually you're working for the man. That's right, you work for the man. Is that bad? Definitely. It's always bad, isn't it? It's a video game. So the story in Dying Light starts quite bad and rapidly gets much worse. And it's something I've got to talk about, because even though there are systems within Dying Light which I really like and really recommend, it's gonna put off a lot of people. A lot of people are just gonna hear about this and go, oh, you know, I can't be bothered with that. So, spoilers ahoy, but I'm gonna have to talk about it. First up, working for the man. What's that like? Well, it's bad, obviously. You go on top of a roof, you get your walkie-talkie out, and then the screen goes all blue, and the lady tells you to do bad things. You do lots of bad things, and your character complains about it and goes, oh, I can't believe they're making me do that. Oh, I can't believe the man's making me do it. It's like, well, mate, A, this is your job, right? And B, like, just don't do it. If it's that bad, don't do it. But no, you spend loads of time doing really bad things, increasingly bad things, whilst going, oh, I can't believe I'm doing all these bad things, until eventually going, no, I'm not doing these bad things anymore. What it boils down to is you have this sudden switch of characterization of being a horrible person, but going, oh, I can't believe I'm a horrible person, to suddenly going, I really care about these people, even though I've been dicking on them for ages. It's very bad character development. But in video games, this isn't that unusual, because yes, you're playing another emotionally unstable chode of a man who just spends about 70% of the game shouting, which leads me to question, when these government agencies, right, when these shady government agencies are hiring their badass people to go and do nasty jobs for them, why do they always end up hiring such, like, unstable people? Just hire someone who really likes money and won't ask any questions. How did this guy get this job? Did he just fluke the interview? It doesn't make any sense. Anyway, back to shouting, because shouting is a really crucial part of the story within Dying Light. You shout at people down the radio, you go back to the boss man, he shouts at you, maybe he'll punch a wall, maybe you'll smash a television. Honestly, who gives a shit? The first few hours of Dying Light give this intrigue about working for the government, gangs, what's going to happen. It's quite interesting. But then after about 6 or 7 hours, it's like a macho stereo that's just been notched up to 11 and you can't turn it off. And it has this feeling that it feels like it's somehow having nuanced characters by having the blokes call each other on the radio afterwards and say, oh, I'm sorry I was so angry then. Oh yeah, oh, it's all right. It's just like people... It's like being back at school again. If you apologise, come on, say sorry. You shouted at him. Say sorry. All right, yeah, I'm sorry. And then, of course, you've got the baddie, who's this chest-tattooed guy with a jacket who is just a psychopath. And he spends a lot of time banging on about how you're not a man because you're not in charge of your own destiny. I'm a man. Men. They should have basically just gone all out and given the guy a fedora. Because honestly, I will get to it in a minute, but there are lots of things about this game and the setting that I really like. But it just seems so keen with the narrative to just whitewash over everything that's good with this just cliche, dull sludge. Basically, if you've seen more than 3 mediocre action films, then nothing that happens in Dying Light will surprise you, which wouldn't be a problem. That wouldn't be a problem if there wasn't so bloody much of it. Go here and talk to this guy, then go here and talk to this guy, then go here and this guy wants to talk to you about something. Now listen, piss poor characterization doesn't stop video games from being fun to play, which is a really good thing, because if it did, we all would have lost interest. I would have lost interest in games a long time ago, because it's been pretty standard for a long time. Just characters, stories, and games, not good. Doesn't matter. But increasingly does matter, because with a lot of modern AAA games, they just put so much story in that it just gets in the way again and again and again. Side quests start off as these infrequent detours, but after about 5 or 6 hours become this sort of MMO-style web of weak lemon drink characters that want you to do stuff for them. Hey, Crane, do you remember the guy who runs the garage? No, not at all. No. It's a small blessing that you can just hammer the circle button or whatever other button your god denotes, but you can just use that to skip stuff, and that's great. But to be honest, it's worse to have a game where you have to ignore the story in order to continue to enjoy the game. That's worse in many ways than just having a game that doesn't really have a story. Because the thing is, and this is the bit where you've had to wait for, I'm sorry. The thing is, when it leaves you to your own devices and it isn't trying to do rubbish story or do rubbish missions, Dying Light is really, really good fun. You've got this big, clean map which isn't cluttered with the junk that you commonly tend to get in all these open world games these days, and you've got simple activities to do. You go and it unlocks safe houses, and you do that by closing the door behind you so that no zombies can get in. You kill all the zombies in there, and then you switch the power back on, and hey presto, you've just made an area safe. It's really, really fun, and thematically just a perfect fit. And even the way these safe houses function is genius. I mean, sure, you can use them to sleep at night, but no one's going to do that. I want to be out at night. You get more XP for being out at night. I'm a soldier. No, they act as basically kind of checkpoint nodes, which means when you die, you'll respawn at the nearest safe house, which means, yeah, you want to get them all, because then if you're doing a mission you fail, you'll be closer. It's a really smart system. And for the early stage of the game, it's so exciting just going around exploring, looking for stuff, scavenging. You go through cupboards, looking for stuff so you can assemble items. It's very, very reminiscent of the early stages of Fallout 3, just looking for things. What's this? Ooh, open a fridge, get some health back. Cool. It even pretty much just exactly steals Fallout 3's lock-picking mechanic, which allows you to do the whole, like, jiminy that and twisty that. If you've played Fallout 3, you'll know. If you haven't, then you might be confused, but that's fine. But it does that in real time, which means you're trying to do this while zombies might be coming up behind you. It's very cool. On the visual scale, it isn't super gorge, but it's pretty nice. It's got a great atmosphere. It's a cool setting. It's a world that you can feel fairly immersed in, left to your own devices. And it's got some nice music. It's got this kind of weirdly Vangelis style sci-fi theme that pops in from time to time, and it's very, very cool. And when the game turns to night, it's pretty Dragon's Dogma-y. It's just dark. You can't really see anything unless you've got the torch on, and there are nastier things out to get you, infected zombies that run faster than you do and will kill you if they find you. And so it means you just have these mad moments where you're just sprinting through the night, like a mad nutter, looking desperately for a place to climb. And this is the really smart thing, is because these guys outrun you, you need to climb, which means you have those real zombie movie moments where you're just running down the street, looking left or right, just desperately like, I need to climb over a fence, I need something, and you just can't find anything. It's incredibly intense and very exciting. And obviously that leads on really neatly to the free running stuff, the parkour, which feels quite clunky, but that's good. The thing is, that's good. It's very refreshing to play a game where you're kind of leaping around and climbing up stuff which doesn't feel effortless and slick after the kind of world has got used to Assassin's Creed of just being able to move up a brick wall like a droplet of water running down a glass. It's nice to have something which feels fallible. It feels like you can mess it up, you can fall, you can get a jump wrong and land in the wrong place, you can fail to grab a ledge because you weren't looking at it properly. You can fall off a ledge. It's nice to know that no one's holding your hand. And it means you have these sections where you have to climb up these massive, great big, like kind of towers. It's not a hard word to find, Matt. It's a tower. Jesus. Anyway, you climb up these massive like towers and you feel scared. It's heart in chest stuff because you feel like you're gonna fall, and you can fall. So, and when you're not climbing, when you're just on the run from zombies, it's nice that it's a bit hard to use and a bit off and a bit open to you just not getting it right, because it means that when you are trying to get away from zombies, it feels like a mad scramble. It doesn't just feel like, oh, it's easy, I'll just jump on a roof. It's like sort of jumping up and down like a deranged rabbit that just is terrified that they're going to die. It's not perfect, but it really, really plays well. It's a lot of fun just running around and jumping from rooftop to rooftop and climbing on stuff and getting good at the free running elements. And then it's actually amplified by the fact that the game gives you good reasons to do that. You have airdrops, you see a plane go over, it drops a package, and if you don't get to it quickly enough, somebody else will grab it, which means you just run as quickly as you can to get to it, and it's just really exciting. Whew, let's just take a moment. I know it's been a roller coaster, because I was like saying there's all these bad things in this game, but there's also really good things, and I probably sound like I've just been like tickling its coconuts for the past 5 minutes, but it is very good in many regards. And one of the things that Dying Light does brilliantly is evasion. Is encouraging you to just avoid the zombies and thinking carefully about how you can do this. You can get a bunch of them to follow you down an alleyway and then run around the building and up, or you can use firecrackers. You can throw something that makes a bit of a noise to just get their attention away from where you are so you can get past. And the great thing about this, and the great thing about the circumstances where you're given the space to move the hordes around a bit and get past them and evade them, means that there are some points in the game where you are forced right into the thick of it and you're forced to be surrounded by zombies, and it makes it incredibly intense just because you've got so used to avoiding them. There's one section where you have to go into a building and you're surrounded by the really nasty ones and you're just running around whilst carrying a bomb. It's good. It's very exciting. I keep saying the word exciting, but it's an accurate description. Sorry. But the disappointing thing is that early in the game, the missions are all very much about this stuff, all very much about the zombies, controlling them. Go over here and set some traps, go over here and switch a power station back on, but the power station's sort of full of zombies. It's all about getting in, evasion, being quick and clever and sneaky. But as the game progresses, you start to have a lot more stuff which is just like, go and kill all the zombies in this village, or like, go and kill all these dudes. Or like, go and kill all of these dudes who've got guns. And it's like, with a gun? Yeah, have a bit. You're in a car park shooting men. And you're just like, what is this? And the problem is, all of this fighting and all this combat stuff really just shines a bit too bright a light on the element of the game which is actually weakest, which is, ironically, the element that Techland brought from one of their own games. The combat when you're fighting against zombies isn't too bad. It's alright, it can be quite fun. When you're fighting against humans though, it's really quite weak, and you sort of think, yeah, this whole melee weapon system is just not very good, it's not very exciting. And I guess crucially the problem is it's just not even nearly as exciting as the parkour. It's way more fun to be running around and avoiding the zombies than it is to be fighting them. And this is a real problem because the entire game's economy is built around weapons and getting new, better weapons. So you find stuff and then you sell it, and then you collect stuff from cupboards and use that to craft new weapons. And it's all just like too much of the sort of economic systems in the game are focused on something which just isn't really what makes the game fun. Luckily, you don't have to focus on this that much, and I went through most of the game just having one good weapon at any point and just being like, yeah, I'll just buy the most expensive weapon from the shop again and upgrade it a bit. This is my weapon for now. And you just use it, it gets you through scrapes. But you've got like 4 weapon slots, and you've got backpack slots for loads more weapons, and you can upgrade them so you can carry loads of weapons. And there's this weird kind of fetishization of knives and hammers, which just doesn't really fit within the setting that they've made. Now hold on there, Susan. I like violent games, okay? I'm not one of these people who thinks games shouldn't be violent. I like violence in games. Look, please don't tell my MP or the police, but I do. I love it. But sometimes violence in games makes me feel uncomfortable, and it did make me feel very uncomfortable in Dying Light, and it took me a little while to work out why. And I kind of worked out that the source of this discomfort comes from a disconnect between the way that the violence plays out on the screen in front of you and the way that my head perceived the violence in the game should play out based on the context and the setting of the game that have been presented to me. I think this is something that's really important that's often a bit overlooked. You know, when people say, oh, I kind of felt like this game was a bit too violent, that does come down to personal taste, of course, and I'm not going to argue that it doesn't, but at the same time, I do think that the game is partially responsible for that, you know, in terms of how it sets up everything else as a context for that violence. And I think a really good example of this, something which I think is a perfect example of when incredible violence can be completely fine, is probably The Last of Us. Combat in The Last of Us felt incredibly violent, but it always felt kind of weirdly necessary. It felt desperate. It was just you or them. You felt like this cornered animal lashing out and not really always being sure what was happening. Just hit him with a pipe. Oh, God. But even though the combat in that game was always very brutal and very nasty, it never felt like it was overly rewarding you with violence. There was no kind of spray of blood as a sort of ba-ba-da-ba-ba-ba-ba, you killed a man. That was cool. It made sense within the world. And when I'm fighting enemies in Dying Light, it feels very much the same. It feels like the only reward I want from combat in Dying Light is survival. And yet the game insists on trying to reward me with these sort of showers of blood and these splattering, these like gory piñatas. They're going, yeah, you killed a zombie. It's like, no, I'm not here for that. It doesn't feel like that kind of game. Now, these things might not seem important to you. It may even seem like I'm being a violence prude. Oh, pull your skirt down. I can see your bloody ankles. Doesn't really work. Listen, I understand that. But at the same time, you have to understand that from my perspective, I'm not saying these things are bad. It just seems like there's not been any thought into the effect of weapons and violence at this level as gameplay mechanics. They're just things that have just been put into the game for seemingly no reason. It kind of feels like no one's actually questioned what they add to the design. What do we want? Do we want the violence to be a part of the design? Do we want the weapons to be a part of the rest of the game's design? They feel like they're just there just because. And I have exactly the same problem with the narrative and the lazy cliches and all of that stuff. It just feels like stuff that's just been put in because why? If you ask somebody, why did you do this? They just go, well, because we're making a zombie game. And it's like, that's not a good answer. Listen, I get this. I'm not naive about it. I understand that AAA games are basically made for mainly teenage boys who love blood and gore. Kids love this stuff, and they even love the macho bullshit and the saving the ladies. It's comforting, it's just comforting because it's just what you know. Oh, I've seen this in films. It's like a warm duvet of blood and guts. But the thing is, what they've made with Dying Light is a different kind of game. It's not like Dead Island. And maybe all of this stuff, all of this narrative and the weapon systems that glues the game together felt like a good fit when they started off designing the game, but it doesn't fit with what the game ended up being. And I'd argue that it is a mistake, because when you're playing a game, you end up getting these really weird mixed messages about what type of a game you're playing. Because Dying Light at its best is basically Far Cry, but survival horror, and that's great. It's really, really good. And because so much of it feels like this open world, survivally frightening thing, it then means this sort of weapon fixation and this incredible violence just feels weird and crass. Basically, you end up with this weird combination of things, which means when you're picking a lock, you can have zombies sneaking up on you in real time, which gets really intense. But when you craft items, which you can do anywhere at any time, you can do it anywhere. You can just be like, oh, I'm almost dead. Time to just pause the game and craft 10 medkits. And you just thought, is this a survival thing or not? I had one weird, silly situation where I was trying to chase a guy down. Oh, I kept running away. I know, I'll just pause the game, make 16 throwing stars, and then just throw them at him. And it's just like, they should have gone all out on one thing or the other. They were so close to making an amazing open world survival horror game. It could have been the first of its type. It could have been a new genre setter. It could have been like, this is a new thing now. These guys did it. But instead, they didn't quite have the guts to just go all out and just jettison everything they brought with them from Dead Island and all this old stuff. Just chuck it in the water, leave it. We don't need it. because the design of what they built, the new stuff, was incredible. Okay, so let's talk about a few of the things that it gets really, really right. You've got the skill trees, which are fabulous. Instead of having just like bollocks percentage-based, oh, you will do 5% more damage when using a machete. No, it actually has lots of new skills. And the good thing about that isn't just like, oh, I have loads more health, loads more armor, carry more things. There are elements of that, but most of the upgrades are new skills which you have to use, which means you're not just getting better at surviving and getting better at running away from zombies because your stats are better and you run faster and all that stuff. No, you're getting better at it because you've got more skills. It relies on you being a better player, but it gives you the tools to do that. Because the thing about the weapon system, and the reason I keep banging on about it, is not only does it not really add much of value to the game, it actually detracts from other stuff that's there. You've got this world which is full of traps, you've got lots of spiked barricades, you've got traps you can activate to get zombies, lure them to one place, take them out. You've got things like firecrackers you can use to get their attention, get them all to one area, and then maybe they're out of the way, or maybe they're near a trap that you set up with an explosive barrel that you've thrown or something. You've got all of this amazing stuff that you can do in the world to either distract the zombies or kill them. And then also you've got all of these amazing physical skills. You've got drop kicks, you've got vaults, you've got ability to throw zombies away from you when they charge at you. You've got the ability to combine these two things to either make hordes something you can easily evade, or make hordes something you can pick off very carefully. And you really do feel like you're in The Walking Dead. These two systems together, the traps and the environment and the stuff in the environment and your physical ability to manipulate the zombies and use tools to distract them and trick them, that's a game. You've got the game. The thing is, the game is so good and it's there. Dying Light as a game is there. But then it kind of smothers that a little bit with all of this sort of weapon upgrading stuff, which just doesn't need to be there. And then it just fucking drowns it in pints and pints and pints of endless, boring, cutscene-based story and story missions. And what are you doing? The reason that Dying Light is so much fun to play, and I need to say it is a lot of fun to play, despite all of this stuff, but the reason that is because of how astutely it borrows ideas. Many have derided the game for being a bit derivative. Personally, I think Dying Light's greatest strength lies in the care in which they've chosen which ideas to borrow and how to use them. It's an eclectic mix of bits from games like Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Fallout, Dragon's Dogma, Outland, and Dead Rising, and even Morrowind. And yet, they're implemented in a way that feels considered and never feels like it's just a cluttered mess. But underneath all of these cleverly implemented little details is a core of a game that just feels like a shrug, just feels like we'll just put that in. It's this weird blend of very careful thought in terms of what things can we bring in to our game from other games. But then when bringing in stuff from their own game, bringing in stuff from Dead Island, they're just going, what should we have? Yeah, just a lot of it. Just bring a lot of it in. Why not? The weapon stuff is just a small misstep that made the game less good than it could have been, but the narrative stuff just genuinely gets in the way by trying to shoehorn in this traditional AAA game stuff into something which doesn't fit. I want to play this amazing survival-based zombie game, but I can't because I need to go and shoot some men in a car park. Or I need to go and talk to this guy, and then talk to this guy, and then I've got to save this lady. Just why are you doing this to me? Why? It's hard to tell if this pitfall is just the now traditional curse of AAA games, but it's hard not to wonder with games that are so successful, things like DayZ, which was so minimal on this side of things and just let you get into the systems, whether or not at one point there was a sit-down conversation whilst developing this game where anybody said, guys, do we really need this much story? There's so much story. Because frankly, if your systems are good enough, if the game you've built is good enough and fun enough, then no, Sunshine. Sunshine, no. You do not need all of this stuff. You look at a game like Destiny, sure, you still can't skip the bloody cutscenes, and you can do that in this. Please, Bungie, let me skip the cutscenes. But it's a game that's just enough fun to play that you could just do just the game. Nothing else matters. Just the game. And Dying Light kind of has that. It's a really good game, really fun to play, but my god, it makes me not want to play it. Just less story, less game. It's one of those weird games where honestly I think they could have taken out a lot of stuff from this game and it would have been better. But I guess then you might not be able to sell it for 50, 40 quid. Oh, God, AAA games are a mess. Anyway, that's it. Dying Light, is it good? Yeah, it's very good. I enjoy it a lot. But bloody hell, they've really messed up a lot of it. Bye!